Welcome to another episode of Pocket Vision Fantasy Sports. We have some of the most intriguing bets in the business, some fantasy updates. This week we're going to tackle it all. We're going to go through uh, the Dolphins. Is their season done? Can they redeem themselves? We'll talk about Trevor Lawrence. What's going on over there? Is he going to get Doug Peterson fired? How many problems do they have going on? We'll talk about some of the studs of the week. Are they going to repeat it, or is it a one-time wonder? And then we'll cover the Thursday best bets and find some sweet single game parlays. As always, we have a lot of people on the show. I thought it'd be good to kind of figure out where these people are at. So we got Marcus, Indianapolis. Martin, where are you even at these days? Are you in
I am in Mexico City right now.
Mexico City? We got Zach over in Chicago and Eric over in Indianapolis as well. So let's go ahead and kick it off and find out what we think about these Dolphins.
Yeah, for me, I think the season is bleak. It all hinges on Tua. If he can come back after their bye, I believe on week 6. If he comes back then week 7, there's a chance to save the season. But if they're going to just shut him down, I think it's all lost. There's nobody out there that they're going to be able to pick up. I think the entire fantasy outlook for that team is doomed. We've already seen it where Tyreek Hill has become unstartable. Going to be tough to bench, but Waddle definitely benching him. Achan, you're just going to have to pray for touchdowns. Their next opponents on there, Titans, maybe not so difficult this week, but then Patriots, Colts, Cardinals, Bills. I don't see a lot of wins on there. And as they lose more games, I think Tua just continues to set out.
Yeah, I think Tua is probably done for the year, and taking it down with him with all these fantasy players. I do think A-Chain's interesting just from they're going to dump passes off to and set up screens and that sort of thing. But I do like Dolphins defense against Will Levis this week. Other than that, it looks pretty bleak.
I'm not gonna bench Tyreek Hill. I mean, you spend a first round pick on him if you have him, and he's just too talented of a guy. I think they're gonna figure out a way to get him in space, and he's gonna make some plays. Yeah, like Marcus said, I'm done with Waddle. I'll keep playing Achan.
If Tua's gone, the team is toast. If Tua comes back, this is a team that can beat anybody in the league. This is a team that could, if they make it into the playoffs and Tua's back, they could. It's not a team you want to play against. But yes, like you said, Waddle, I've already benched him in some of my leagues. But with a competent quarterback, if they can get somebody in there to actually play quarterback and distribute the ball, you might see a little more work out of Tyreek Hill and Waddle.
Huntley, I believe they signed Huntley.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to start this week. I hear rumors. I'll see if I can confirm.
Can't hurt.
I don't know if he's a competent quarterback, but
we saw some flashes. No, we saw some flashes in Baltimore when he was backing up Lamar Jackson. I mean, I'm not saying I don't think the Dolphins are going to win games, which does not bode well for Tua coming back, but there's a chance that he could at least make some of these guys fantasy relevant. Yeah.
As somebody who has some Waddle shares, I hope Miami is one of the most fun offenses to watch last year. Yeah, they did end up finishing with a lot of rushing touchdowns, but the passing offense was still elite. Tyreek Hill is always fun to watch, and it's just so frustrating watching the Seattle game where there was a couple of plays, Hill wide open for big play, quarterback can't get it to him. Couldn't even get the ball out of his hands. Just really
They look terrible. They look terrible.
It's really going to be up to Michael McDaniel to draw some things up to get Tyreek the ball in space, and same with Waddle and Achan as well. You're going to have to get creative.
Let's move on to another.
Wait! Before we move on, Marty, we have to confirm this. McDaniel says that it is a possibility for sure that Tyler Huntley could start. That's from Adam Schefter, posted earlier today. But also, before we go on, what?
So it doesn't. I mean, there's definitely a possibility that Huntley might start. That seems real informative there.
They need to make a change, though.
But at least it's from Schefter. I'm not the one saying it.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
Anyway, so another team that started off with a not such a good start is Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So should the Jaguars consider moving on from Trevor Lawrence? I personally don't think so. I think that'd be a little premature, but yeah, Lawrence has not looked good at all this.
Well, they just paid him a shitload of money, so I don't think they're going to be moving on anytime soon. But he
Agreed.
is your prototypical average quarterback. I don't think he's going to go out there and do a lot more than that, but that's the situation they've got themselves into at this point.
Yeah, somebody who has Trevor Lawrence in a couple of super flex leagues, I'm definitely hoping for a bounce back. I will say the first 3 games of the season have been against above average defenses when it comes to against the pass. You still would like to see a little bit more signs of life coming out of the offense. I'm not sure what's going on. It's almost like it's rookie or Lawrence all over again. I do think Doug Peterson is going to be the one that takes the fall, especially if they are just completely non-competitive the entire season. But as their schedule softens up a little bit, I want to see what can happen with that offense. It looks like they were finally deciding to use Christian Kirk again, which was encouraging in the second half, instead of forcing deep overthrows to Thomas that ends up in interceptions. So, you know,
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's hard to. The second half of that game was out of contention. I mean, like when that game was actually going on, it was they were getting slaughtered. On
Buffalo, I think, shown to be an elite defense. So it just is what it is. I don't think Jacksonville, I think most of us are saying they can't bench Lawrence. There's too much invested at stake for that to happen.
And he's shown flashes of being a competent quarterback in the past. Like I'm not quite given up on him yet. I actually think he will bounce back, have a solid stat line this week in Houston. I do not think Jacksonville will win the game, but I think that he will put up a respectable fantasy stat line.
Well, all I will add is they should definitely not bench him for Mac Jones. I don't know why that's even a question. But now that we talked about 2 teams that are in trouble, let's talk about some of these teams that are starting off 3-0. Who's our best team here?
For me, it looks like the Buffalo Bills, surprisingly. I had the Bills as a team that would be potentially missing the playoffs this year. I was just really worried about their offense. I severely underestimated just how good Josh Allen is, but also the defense looks very elite. It looks to be a defense that you might want to avoid your just average Joe fantasy players against. Don't consider flex players against them. They look to be kind of on a mission. And just completely lighting the world on fire on offense as well. So for me, it's Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm taking Buffalo as well. I'll talk about it more later when we talk about crystal ball picks, but they haven't even been in competitive games. I mean, they're just crushing people right now.
Yeah, Bills.
Chiefs,
Eric?
Bills, Vikings, and Seahawks. I mean, I think you gotta. I like the
Eric,
Bills.
are you gonna rickroll everybody? You gonna slow roll us on this one?
I don't know what that quite means, but
It's the way you were set it up. You started listing out all the teams, and you're like, here it is. And then I thought you were gonna come out and say the Vikings. No,
yeah. So
of course.
I'm looking on my notes page. And I don't think we even mentioned the teams that were undefeated. So I thought, well, we might as well mention these teams because the listener might not know who they are.
No, yeah.
I would say
I think we should move on to a much more exciting topic.
So Eric, what are you gonna say? I kind of got in there.
That's it. I just was on my Eric's notes tab and it wasn't quite there.
But who are you gonna take though of those people?
No, I'm gonna take the Bills.
So everyone's on the Bills.
I'm surprised that we're all on the
Jason,
Bills.
are you on the Bills?
Unless the Bills play the Chiefs.
I mean, of those teams,
I think it's hard. I was just saying, I think it's hard to go with anybody else.
I think you can. I think it's crazy to say you could play devil's advocate and take the Chiefs. That's the crazy part of what we're saying.
They've won the last 2 Super Bowls.
But the Vikings, we can't. How can you get behind this yet? I mean, it's just so new with Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. I think that'd be nice. If I had to choose 4 teams, I'd like to see the Seahawks.
Vikings have the most impressive wins, beating San Francisco and Houston like they did.
I thought they were going to be 0-3. They're 3-0.
They weren't really. Yeah, they weren't even that close of games. They were at home, but those are games Kirk Cousins couldn't handle in his career in the Vikings. All the big games. So maybe the Vikings are for real. That defense
I mean,
is shutting teams down.
I think it's impressive, but I think what's not being said here is it possible that Stroud is in a sophomore slump? Obviously he played the Bears that game. They won, didn't go so well, and they lose to the Vikings. I feel like that team just seems off a little bit too.
Yeah, it
But
could be.
hard to say.
Let's talk about another team. They're not quite undefeated, but Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders are playing well and very well last week. 21 of 23, 254 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, another 39 yards on the ground, another rushing touchdown. Meanwhile, both running backs each had a rushing touchdown, so the team is looking really good. Jaden Daniels, I've been pounding the table for him ever since the rookie draft. I have so much Jaden Daniels in Dynasty football. What do you guys think? Is Jaden Daniels, is he here to stay? Is he going to be around for a while?
It's a new day in Washington, D.C.
Come on,
Jaden
Zach, rep the
Daniels,
shirt.
he looked awesome on Monday night. The 2 passes, in particular to Terry McLaurin, were on the money, especially the second one to ice the game for a touchdown was just one of those like rip your heart out and show it to the other team moments that you just don't see very often, especially from a rookie quarterback. It's just one of those it moments. Whatever it is, he has it. So
That
very
completion
exciting.
percentage too.
Very, yeah. The entire game, he just looked like he knew what to do with the football every single play.
Yeah, I would say I expected Jaden Daniels to be a good fantasy quarterback. I am more than surprised of just how well he looks as a real life quarterback. I think, I mean, it's only been 3 games, but there's a chance here. Washington has found their guy. I think uh, Cliff Cliff's Kingsbury is pulling all the right strings so far to go into a desperate Cincinnati team that was 0-2 and pretty much punched him in the mouth the entire game. I don't think it was a fluke. This was Washington was in control in the second half, and they might have to score a lot of points to win games, but looks like Daniels is up to the task.
And
Yeah, definitely. I was to say definitely the most exciting thing to happen to the Washington franchise since 2012 when they had RG3 come out and beat the Saints week 1. RG3 had an incredible rookie season, and it seems like this is 2012 all over again with the star potential rookie of the year. We covered it preseason that he was our favorite pick bet to make to win rookie of the year. He's like plus 600. That's down to plus 130. So this is just looking like one of those magical seasons, one of the few magical seasons for Commanders fans.
And I actually love seeing Jaden Daniels hit Terry McLaurin on those deep balls. One for the touchdown and the other deep ball that was just, I think, on the 2-yard line, almost in there. Jaden Daniels hit the deep ball over and over and over in college, and now we're seeing some of that in the pros, which is really exciting.
Yep. So moving on now, we wanted to highlight some of the more impressive kind of out of nowhere performances in fantasy last week. Call it our fantasy forecast if you'd like. First player we wanted to take a look at here was Bo Nix. He was QB, I believe, 13 last week. For over 200 yards, he had 9 rushes for 47 yards. I want to say Tampa Bay's was one of the more heavily picked survivor picks. So nobody was expecting anything out of Denver in the offense. And Nix just from as soon as the game started, went right down the field, scored a touchdown, got the ball back, did it again. He looked so much better. The entire, Denver offense might be a little bit rejuvenated. And if Nix is going to be able to add nearly 50 yards rushing, he becomes a very interesting quarterback to have, especially in super flex, I think.
Yeah, I agree. He could have some good games going forward, but this week at the Jets, that is a scary matchup. I think he's going to come crashing back down to reality this week in New York.
25 completions, 216 yards. He might be able to repeat those stats, just some of them going to the Jets. That's just a tough matchup. But definitely, if you're a Broncos fan, that's a big win to go into Tampa, a hot team like that, and to really just destroy them.
And if he doesn't get those rushing yards on the ground and the rushing touchdown, I mean, we wouldn't even be talking about him. 216 yards passing. That doesn't quite do it. In fantasy football, you need a little more production than that to stay relevant.
Yeah. Well, moving on to a guy who didn't have any issues producing on the ground was Chuba Hubbard, part of the surprise Panthers attack last week. He was RB5, had 21 carries for 114 yards, had a receiving touchdown in there. Dalton might have just saved the entire Panthers offense. When Brooks comes back, we'll see how much that eats into Hubbard, but I think Hubbard showed that he's a very competent running back. And he might be able to say, hey, I'm going to be earning some of my touches as well. So I think at least until Brooks is back, Hubbard all of a sudden becomes a low-end RB2, in my opinion.
It'll be interesting to see how this Carolina Panthers offense does moving forward. I like them against the Bengals. I mean, what we saw from the Bengals defense on Monday night, I'll take just about anybody. But I'm still not ready to trust this offense as a whole. I mean, was Bryce Young really that bad? I mean, come on.
I don't trust that the Panthers are going to be good every week. I don't think you're going to be able to trust them every week, but I do think the hot streak is going to continue this week against Cincinnati, especially for Hubbard. Cincinnati is giving up 142.3 rushing yards per game so far this year, and Hubbard's going to be their guy, so he's going to get that work.
Yeah, I agree, Marty. I'd like to see that. I have Hubbard. I picked up Hubbard in a lot of leagues. I think I've seen him as a free agent, at least before waivers ran last night. He was a free agent in a lot of leagues, which I was surprised with.
I would think that number's shrunken quite a bit.
Well,
yeah,
I think part of the reason too probably is people are worried that when Brooks comes in, that
he's
almost a wasted waiver pick. It only could be possibly good for 2 weeks if he comes back. I mean, obviously they probably use him in.
I think Hubbard, is worth picking up and spending fab on just for this week. I mean, I think he's in a great spot this week.
Yeah, same.
He's in a good spot.
Moving on to another running back, Father Time. I thought would have caught up to Derrick Henry by now. But he continues to say, no, running all over as Zach would call them, the Alice Cowboys, still no D in Dallas, having 25 touches for 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, finished as RB3 of the week. I think the first week, Derrick Henry owners got a little panicky. Yeah, he did score, but he looked old, slow, and they weren't giving him touches. I think now we kind of see that when the Ravens meet a team that is well overmatched, Derrick Henry is just going to go crazy and flirt with 20 touchdowns if he can stay healthy.
He's already got 4 touchdowns, and he was negatively impacted big time the first week when they were coming from behind, and he's not a receiving back. So, and that was really his only dud performance. He's looked really good weeks 2 and 3. I think Henry's going to keep.
Are we worried about that this week against the Bills, though? Because this could be another game where they are always, chasing what the Bills score. So
I agree with that.
Yeah, we might get more of a week 1 performance.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you're not going to bench Henry, but I do agree with that.
I think it's. Go ahead, Eric.
I agree with Zach. I don't think we're going to see quite that production this week, but I was happy to see it last week. I had a 3-leg parlay with 2 touchdowns, over on the yard, and Ravens win. So happy to see that last week, but I don't think that's going to happen this week. I just think they'll be trailing a little bit more from behind. They won't be able to pound the rock as much.
We'll see if we develop a pattern with Henry. I think regardless, very safe floor of him. He's going to score a touchdown. It's just Baltimore's offense too good. He'll run it in.
So is it the trend that we can expect from the Dallas Cowboys as far as giving up the run? Because we've seen 2 weeks in a row now, Alvin Kamara, then Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
they're bleeding out over there, Marcus.
Is Devin Singletary in for a big game tomorrow night?
I would say we talked about a little bit in the pre-show where the Cowboys are front runners. When they play good teams, this is what's going to happen. Their defense isn't good, especially against the run, and they are going to get gashed. And it's going to lead to just Dak and the offense having comeback mode and a lot of inflated stats. When they face a team that's not very good, which I don't think the Giants are that good, We're going to see the Cowboys that go out and crush people, and you say like, what's going on? Kind of like the Miami Dolphins of the NFC last year. So I think I'm expecting Dallas to make it look fairly easy, like they always do against the Giants.
Dallas is, I will throw this stat out there. So far through 3 weeks, Dallas is giving up 185.7 rushing yards per game. And Devin Singletary is averaging 85 yards per game over the last 2 weeks, both with less than 20 touches.
So are you all in on Singletary?
I'm not all in. I don't have him in any leagues, but that's because for this week, and coming into the season, I didn't like Devin. He wasn't on my radar at all. I wasn't interested in Devin Singletary, but he's looked good the last 2 weeks, and he's playing the team that's given up the most fantasy points to running back. So yes, I do like Devin Singletary at home this week.
Let's talk about a receiver that Marty does have. The wide receiver won last week, Juwan Jennings, 11 catches, 175 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Something I didn't see coming at all. And when I see my opponent having him in his lineup, I didn't think I was going to get beat by him. And yes, I got torched by him, putting up 50 points in fantasy football. What did you guys think? Did you see that coming? Is that going to be able to repeat itself?
I thought maybe he'd have like 8 or 9 catches for $150 and 2 touchdowns, but this is just crazy. This has got to be one of the more surprising stat lines I've ever seen in 20 years of playing fantasy football, to be honest.
He beat Debo's career best game. He beat Ayuk's career best game. I think it's just one of those weird things where I don't understand. You'd think they would want to spotlight Brandon Ayuk. You paid him all that money. There was, the turmoil over the offseason on both sides. This was his chance to shine. And I think Ayuk was very capable of doing exactly what Jennings did. And they're just like, nah, let's just let Jennings have a.
They're punishing him.
I think that they could be punishing him, but it's also possible that Ayuk's just not ready. I mean, he didn't have a training camp.
There are probably important little things that we just don't factor in. It's just, kudos to you, Marty. I didn't see a lot of people picking up Jennings. Definitely didn't see anybody starting him.
I did not see Jennings having a game anywhere near this, but I did. I mean, it was a great opportunity with he had he had double-digit fantasy points in week 1, and that was with a healthy Debo, Ayuk, and drawing a blank on the tight end. But everybody was healthy.
Yeah.
Come on, neighbors.
Do you think it's repeatable? And when I say repeatable, not 11, 175, and 3, but repeatable in terms of he can produce very startable wide receiver numbers.
Definitely, as long as Kittle and Debo are out, I think absolutely.
Well, let's not forget Ricky Pearsall making a miraculous comeback in week 5.
Literally.
Which it does hurt a little bit being as big on Pearsall as I was in the preseason in Dynasty rookie drafts to see Juwan Jennings had this type of game, because this was supposed to be Pearsall, coming in when Debo's out. So, what could have been, but we'll see.
It's hard to imagine that the Niners would just ignore Juwan Johnson. They would just ignore Juwan Jennings, the rest of the season after a game like that. Like, now they've seen what he can do. I mean, obviously there's so many mouths to feed in San Francisco when everybody's healthy that he's going to have dud performances, but I think that he's earned a spot after this game. Like, I think he has a role now in that team.
You would think that, but we've seen stuff like this before. What was that running back on the Patriots name that just ran for 200 yards against the Colts and then slept in, so then never touched the ball again? That's
Bill Belichick. I don't remember his name. I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. You don't remember his name. Who knows? Juwan Jennings, years from now, might be forgotten.
The thing with Jennings, though, is he is a good run-blocking receiver, right? That's why they have him on the team.
Mm-hmm.
I think they block with him a lot, so it's kind of like a shift this week. But I'm sure they love to have him on the outside edge anytime blocking.
Yeah, and that guy, I believe his name was Jonas Gray. But moving on to another receiver we wanted to talk about. I think a lot of guys a lot of people liked this guy as a sneaky PPR play. But then when they saw how awful Bryce Young is, they didn't think it was going to happen. And in comes Andy Dalton to possibly save a season. Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 5, 8 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown. I think everybody is back. It's wheels up again for Deontay to have a really good season. Thielen is on IR. I do think Legette's a little interesting in deep leagues, or at least it's there for him to do something. But Deontay, I think, is going to be somebody you're going to, in leagues, you got to start 3 wide receivers or more with flexes. He's going to be somebody you're going to want to be comfortable with starting every week, in my opinion.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson was a guy I drafted a lot later in. I traded for him in Dynasty. I just thought he was going to get peppered with targets. I thought he was going to have the Adam Thielen role, 10 to 20 targets a game, and just get pounded with the ball. Instead, Bryce Young has just destroyed the offense. They can't move the ball at all. And now Andy Dalton comes in and revives, brings it back to life. So I'm happy to see Deontay Johnson. The problem is I got cute in some leagues. And even though Deontay Johnson was my starter, I benched him for a guy like Jameson Williams that comes in and puts up a dud week. So when you get your guys, when you draft your guys, Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, Dalton Kincaid, guys that had kind of a bad last couple weeks, and then they all hit in week 3. So you kind of got to get your guys and start them. Can't get cute.
I am right there with you, Eric. I was huge on Deontay coming into the season, and I had him benched in all my leagues this week because I mean, how could you start him after those first 2 weeks with Bryce? But I am still very excited to see this because I held on to him. He's on my bench, and he'll be in my lineup this week.
Yeah, without Thielen there, I think he definitely his
Yeah.
usage is going to be pretty killer. I'm also interested to see if maybe this could resurrect the Jonathan Mingo hype from a year ago. Maybe, possibly.
Oh, come on. Zach, that's pipe
I
dream.
think
right
it's
there.
it's if anybody, it's Leggett, in my opinion. I'm curious. Do we expect Dalton not to do that every week, but like to be serviceable, or is this just a 1 week wonder and we're gonna look stupid this time next week or here in a couple of weeks and Deontay's back to no start and you don't want anybody?
No, really, I'd say no. But after watching Joe Flacco destroy last year, anything's possible.
Yeah.
And guys, remember, Andy Dalton is the only quarterback this season who's had a 3-touchdown, 300-yard game, and he's averaging that.
Yeah, it's great.
It's one
crazy
game.
here.
He's averaging that. He's just mean in his mode.
What I said is correct.
I think the Miami Dolphins would be thrilled to have him as their backup instead.
I don't know why more teams don't trade for people like Dalton. Eric makes a good point. You could just throw him into any roster. It's worth paying him when these guys go down like Tua.
Yep.
The drop off between Tua and Skyler is crazy. I mean, have someone like Darnold. Have somebody like you get it.
Yep. So the last guy we wanted to talk about out of nowhere, tight end 1 on the week, Dallas Goedert, 10 catches, 170 yards. I'm skeptical, but I also had Goddard last year and he wasn't very good. I think by the end of it, Smith was hurt, Brown's out, and a lot of it was just a broken play. Defenders ran into each other and he got like 70 of these yards on one play, it felt like. So I'm not sure, but are you guys buying Dallas Goedert in this horrible tight end start to the year as being somebody you're going to be happy to start every week?
Well, I mean, 10 catches, 170 yards, that might be more than what Kyle Pitts does all season. So why not?
A lot of tight ends don't have that much for their first 3 weeks. I mean, you got to look at it. If he's a free agent, I think he's worth adding. I think he's going to be very inconsistent, like a lot of tight ends. I mean, we've seen other tight ends come out of Hunter Henry had a monster game like this too. I mean, it's just, we see this pretty often. A tight end erupts, you pick him up, and you start him the next week, and he gets you 1 catch for 8 yards.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
There's very few tight ends that I'm happy to have in my lineup. It's almost like a lottery ticket, like what they're doing this year. We don't have that consistency at tight end. But 10 catches, the target share, that's something you kind of want to keep your eye on and see if he can keep that up. I have a feeling that he's not going to once those other receivers become healthy, but if you had him in the lineup this week, you're in good shape.
Yes. Alrighty. Moving on to the best bets section here. It has not been the most promising start for our best bets. I did get a Brissett under 170 passing yards. That did feel a little free, and I'm glad that it was not even close to a sweat. But the rest of us here just dragged. But it's early. I think
I would like to point out that my bets from week 1 and 2 both would have cashed the first half of the next week. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Moving on from starting off the Thursday.
But we got it. We just got your best bet, Marcus.
Are you
CD
guys there?
Lamb. Yeah,
Yeah,
CD
sorry
Lamb,
about
baby.
that. CD
No,
Lamb
you're
for
good.
me, anytime touchdown. The turmoil this week in Dallas has been what's going on with Dak and Lamb fighting on the sidelines. Lamb's come out and apologized. Lamb traditionally tortures the Giants. I see that happening again. Kind of, I don't know if it's squeaky wheel per se, but Lamb's stats have not been great to start the year, and I just expect him to get into the end zone, and I like that at minus 125.
I'm looking at the other side of the ball with Neighbors. His you can over double your money if with 6.5 receptions in the last 2 weeks. He's had 30 targets, and I believe he's averaging 9 receptions per game there. So I definitely like him for just 6.5 in a game that there's a decent chance they're going to be coming from behind in and passing a lot. And as we talked about earlier, I also like the overs on Devin Singletary.
Yeah, Marty, Malik Neighbors I like, but I like Wandell Robinson for over 4.5 catches. Pays a little bit better, plus 125. I think he's going to hit either way, but CD Lamb, he sometimes gets doubled and tripled, and maybe they realize that's what they need to do to Neighbors to shut him down. And if they switch to that option, Wandell Robinson definitely hits. And if they just stay with their normal zone coverage, man coverage, don't double anybody, yeah, I still see a world where he hits both directions.
So some of you guys like Cowboys, some of you like Giants. I'm going to take one of each. And to me, this is all about playing time. So Jalen Tolbert's over is 28.5 receiving yards. He's been playing 75 and 86% of the snaps the last 2 weeks, and that's resulted in 82 and 42 receiving yards. So just give me 29. I think that's pretty reasonable. And then I'm going to attach to that Theo Johnson's over of 13.5 receiving yards. He's in 3 games. He's had at least, he's run the field 79% of the snaps and has had 1 catch in 2 of those games and 0 in the other. So not ideal, but he can get 14 receiving yards in one catch, no problem. He has 7 targets on the season. So I like the chances on that. And put those together for a parlay for a plus 242 payout.
Yeah,
Well,
I like
speaking
that.
of parlays, now we bring it to Marcus's super special single game parlay.
I don't know
Yes.
why mine didn't get that hype, but whatever.
You have to have at least
Not enough
3. At
legs.
least 3. You have to have enough legs, bro.
Okay.
Yeah, so for me, it wouldn't make sense if I didn't have my best fit in there with Liam anytime touchdown. I'm going to agree with Eric when I was looking at bets for Thursday. The second bet that stood out to me the most was getting Wandell at over 4.5 catches at plus money. Maybe the shoe will drop one day and Wandell's that's not going to get the targets, but Daniel Jones just peppers them. 2 of the 3 games, he's gotten 7 and 8 targets respectively. As you can see, the third leg here, Cowboys minus 5.5. I think the Giants are going to be throwing. There's more targets to Wandell. He can easily get there, even if Neighbors is having over a 30% target share. And the reason why I'm going Cowboys minus 5.5 is we kind of hinted on it a little earlier. When the Cowboys play bad teams, they typically dominate them. Last time the Cowboys played in New York, it was 40-0 in favor of the Cowboys. There is some potential. Giants coming off of a little bit of an emotional win, I think, beating Cleveland because nobody, I think, really expected that. They were also one of the more, Cleveland was one of the more popular picks in Survivor. Dak, over 75% of the time in his career, has covered as a favorite in divisional games. So for me, my parlay is going to be Lamb touchdown, Wandell over 4.5 catches, and the Cowboys to cover the current spread of minus 5.5. That comes out to plus 472. And on FanDuel, you can use a no sweat token. And if your bet loses, it comes back to you in a free bet. So I really like that there. Moving on to our prime time games pick'em. Looking at our seasonal records here, all of us went 2-1. I think we all got the Commanders wrong. They're just expecting the Bengals to do what they normally do. So all went 2-1.
Which is lose.
Yeah, we'll have to probably factor that in moving forward. But right now, Zach is still our leader at 8-2. Eric's 7-3. Marty and I are 6-4. Moving on to the primetime games, we just talked about it: Cowboys and Giants. obviously I am on the Cowboys. Eric, who do you got?
I got the Cowboys.
Give me the Cowboys as well.
I'm on the Cowboys.
Cowboys.
Clean
Reluctantly.
sweep. Clean
So-
sweep.
This next game, I think, will be interesting. I don't know what everybody's going to pick. We've got the Buffalo Bills visiting the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football, probably the game of the week. This is going to be a very interesting game for sure. If the Ravens can get back to 500 when a lot of people were panicking on them, or is Buffalo going to go into Baltimore and put their stamp in September saying that we are the team to beat this year? For me, I'm going to go with the Ravens at home. Marty, who do you got?
I'm going to go with the Bills. I think they're going to keep it rolling. They've looked unstoppable.
I will go with the Bills as well. I think it's going to be a really good game, but the Bills pull it out.
I think it's going to be close, but I give me the Bills.
Good. I need to
Marcus,
catch up a
opportunity
game
to
somewhere.
make up a game. Yeah.
When you pick
Or
first every
lose it.
time, it's hard
Lose
to
one
gain
more.
ground. But no, I like the Ravens there. I do think it's an interesting line that the Bills are getting 2.5. But ultimately, I think Baltimore is they're due to beat the Bills. And then
Because
moving
they'll
on,
be 0-4, right? If they lose. Oh no, they
well,
won.
no, they beat the
against Dallas.
Cowboys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I think it was a couple years ago. The Ravens, I want to say, or maybe it's vice versa. I just know these teams have had a lot of battles, and I feel like Buffalo usually comes out on top.
I just want to add real quick, if you're betting on teams that are due, you're going to lose a lot of money.
Well, I said from
Throwing
a
that
betting
out there.
perspective, I think Bills plus
Yeah,
2.5 is
the
interesting.
Giants are due to not get crushed by the Cowboys. I mean,
Yeah. And then moving on to our last game here, the Monday night game, we've got surprise 3-0 Seahawks at the Lions, who finally turned the ship right and looked really good against Arizona. I think this will be a good fantasy. There's gonna be a lot of fantasy players, I think, swinging matchups in this game. I would expect. For me, Lions are at home. I think they give the Seahawks their first loss. Give me the Lions. Zach, who do you got?
I am going to take the Lions, and I don't think it's going to be that close.
Really?
Yeah.
I agree. I like the Lions, and I also think they cover the spread.
I'm gonna
Does
take the
Kenneth
Lions.
Walker make a difference? Just curious, everybody.
No. And I got more on that later.
Eric?
Yep. I'm going to take the Lions at home as well.
All right. So it looks like the only difference there is the Ravens, or I've got the Ravens for on everybody.
Well, let's
All
move on to
the
our-
crystal ball bust. I'm going to chime in here because I know it's a complicated transition. But last week, we had a lot of bust picks. We had a lot of ball picks. But I want to talk about them because you guys freaking did great. All right. Speaking of bust, Eric, Brees Hall, RB12. Obviously, that's a bust. I mean, that's a top 3 running back. He dropping to number 12. Not so hot. We got Zach Baker Mayfield, QB 27. Such great insight. Marcus, wow. Anthony Richardson tanked. Another dud. And Marty with the biggest bust of them all, RB41, Josh Jacobs. Stellar work, guys. And our crystal ball picks, I think the only person I missed one here was Marty. You really kind of...
Yeah, Gardner let me down. I just got that Raiders Carolina game completely wrong. I had Deontay Johnson on the bench, and I was betting on Gardner Minshew.
It's all about game scripts. You got to get that from Goodell. Eric had Olave at 12. Great pick. He bounced back. Joe Burrow didn't win the game, came back. And Jamar Chase, wide receiver 2. So any of your guys' thoughts overall? I mean, just told you so, or...
Yeah, I told you so would suffice. No, it's nice to get a crystal ball pick right. My busts have been right every week, but that's the first crystal ball
And
pick.
I will say,
nailed.
Gardner Minshew at QB 20. That's solid. I mean, like for who he is, I mean, you're not going to expect him to be a whole lot better than 20.
In Brees Hall, I just see Braylon Allen taking more and more of his work. Braylon Allen had more rushing yards that game. Braylon Allen caught all of his 3 targets, 3 for 3. So I think he's going to keep sneaking into more and more of gets to a 50-50 timeshare.
On that note, I do think if you have Brees Hall, you should definitely have Braylon Allen because he's going
And
to be awesome if something were to happen
you
to Brees
probably
Hall.
missed your chance at this point. I think that Allen is now owned in most leagues.
You're
You might
probably
have just
right,
been to
but
trade for him.
yeah, maybe trade. I think that's good risk management.
But moving
Yeah.
on to the crystal ball busts of the week. Let's see if you guys can do it again. Let's see if Marty can get back on track and go 2 for 2.
Yeah, for me, my crystal ball bust of the week is Rashad White. He's been not doing very well so far, and Bucky Irving looks kind of better than Rashad White. Bucky Irving was a guy that pretty much was undrafted in almost every league, and now it's getting to a 50-50 timeshare. He's been way more productive with his touches than Rashad White, and I see that continuing. He's a smaller version. He's a little under 200 pounds, but he can see the lane, and he's hitting the holes right, and Rashad White's averaging like 1.9 yards a carry, and Bucky Irving's averaging almost a little over 4 yards a carry. So I just see the team's going to give Bucky Irving a little more catches. So Rashad White, the bust this week.
Or as Martin says, Marquise Irving.
Marty calls him by his full name.
He's good pals with him.
Throws the rest of us off.
I'd be pretty nervous if I had Rashad White in some leagues. I agree with that take, Eric. What I'm going to go with is the running back going against the Lions. Let's take a look at what the Lions have done to running backs this year. Week 1, Kyron Williams, which I believe was Marcus's crystal ball bust pick. Good call. Week 1, 18 carries for 50 yards, 2.8 yards per carry. Week 2, Rashad White here, 10 carries, 18 yards, 1.8 yards per carry, and then last week James Conner, 9 carries, 17 yards, 1.9 yards per carry. This week they get the Seattle Seahawks with whether it's Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker. I think it's going to be a rough night. Zach Charbonnet has been awesome filling in for Kenneth Walker, but I would not expect that on Monday night.
And for me, my crystal ball bust of the week is going to be Garrett Wilson. It still looks like him and Rodgers are trying to develop a rapport that I don't think is going to be solved in 1 week. Yeah, he did score last week, but he only had 5 catches for 33 yards. The Jets are at home and they're heavily favored. So game script, unless Goodell says differently, is pointing at the Jets might just use Hall and Allen and not try to deal with the shadow realm of Patrick Surtain. Here are the receivers that have gone up against Surtain this year. DK Metcalf, 3 for 29. George Pickens, 2 for 29. And last week, Mike Evans, 2 for 17. These are all really good players, and I don't see that changing this week with Garrett Wilson and with the game script. I'm not saying bench Garrett Wilson, though that would be a very bold call because you're probably in, too many injuries. You're not going to bench Wilson, but if you're, I wouldn't expect him to be any more than a high-end wide receiver 3 when it's all done. When we look back at the point rankings.
And mine is Derek Carr. I didn't really trust Derek Carr coming into the season. He had an incredible start to the season. He looked really good in weeks 1 and 2, and then crashed back down to earth last week. I think he's on the road this week in Atlanta, and Atlanta runs the ball a lot. They milk clock with their running backs, and they're only giving up 176 passing yards per game through the air. So Derek Carr is going to have good games. He's going to be inconsistent this season. He's probably a borderline starter in 2 QB leagues, but I'm not looking his way if I have options this week. And now let's move on to our crystal ball picks of the week, guys we think are going to smash. And mine for this week is CJ Stroud. I actually had him as a bust when he was in Chicago, but this week I think he's going to really have a great game against a Jacksonville pass offense that has really struggled. They really got smoked last week. Josh Allen could do whatever he wanted. We were talking pre-show. I think that if Josh Allen, if you told him he had to score 10 touchdowns to get a win, to record a win in the win-loss column, I think he would have thrown 10 touchdowns. So, and Stroud has the weapons. I think he's going to have his best game of the season so far this week.
And my crystal ball pick of the week is Deontay Johnson. The Carolina Panthers were dead, and Andy Dalton came in and performed CPR, brought this team back to life. I see Deontay Johnson over on his catches, over on his yards, and finding the end zone this week.
Yeah, and for me, it's going to be a player in a game that I expect to be the highest scoring of the week. It'll be Brian Robinson Jr. I want every piece I can in this Washington-Arizona game. But Brian Robinson has been a flex player, I think, for a lot of people. This week, I think he upgrades to a very solid RB2. He's been over 14 fantasy points per game so far in the first 3 weeks of the season. And now he's facing an Arizona defense that, dating back to last year, have given up the most fantasy points to road running backs. We just saw what happened last week with Detroit running all over them. And Austin Eckler has already been ruled out for this week with a concussion. So Robinson's going to get all the touches he can handle. He can do it passing, running, in a game that Washington could easily have 4, 5 touchdowns. I feel like Robinson's going to have a high likelihood to get in there, and he's going to be a no-brainer. He's going to move past flex territory and smash this week.
Well, I like the sound of 4 or 5 Washington touchdowns, Marcus. I'm going to go with a guy who I was pretty big on in the preseason, and that's Khalil Shakir. So far this year, he's had 3 for 42, 5 for 54, 6 for 72, with a couple touchdowns mixed in there. He's caught 100% of his targets. The numbers aren't anything that pops out, but you have to keep in mind they are rolling over teams, just not even playing, throwing the ball much in the third, fourth quarter. So bringing the Ravens, I think that's going to be a closer game, and Josh Allen's going to actually maybe has to throw those 10 touchdowns. I don't know. So they're going to be playing a complete game, and then Khalil Shakir is going to get a complete game's worth of stats. And he's a guy that I think you should be starting every week now.
Yeah, I love it, Zach. And I will add that the Baltimore Ravens are number 1 ranked against the run so far this season and dead last in yards per game allowed through the air.
Good point.
This week's double big ball goes to Marcus. I'm all in on Brian Robinson. I think Eckler's out officially. That's official. So
Yeah,
I just
it is
feel
official.
like that's going to be a lot of carries. I don't think they're going to be giving that to, I think McNichols is the third guy. I just feel like he's going to be an overkill, and I think I side with Eric. Rashad White. I mean, really, I don't know if I like Marquise Irving, but I don't like Rashad White either. But remember, everybody, thanks for watching the show. Hit that like button, subscribe, smash, and we will see you next week. What?